using Walnut mixture. So we said, let's put that in. And they're like, why? And we said, well, UC Berkeley has one.
South Willamette, as part of the testimony, I think that they received.
So I could just see.
We don't have a meeting to do it right now.
Yeah, I want to get
A couple weeks.
So this is, so you just
Okay,
how much?
there you go. You can have.
Oh,
You need a highlight and you need a page.
brilliant.
So we'll have time to read. Or nothing.
A little bit past 6, are we? To order. Tonight we're holding 2 public hearings of the Eugene Planning Commission. The first is to consider land use code amendments related to maintenance of the code, and the second is to consider a package of amendments that would implement the South Willamette Concept Plan through the creation of a new South Willamette Special Area Zone. The proposal includes a combination of Metro Plan text and land use diagram amendments, corresponding refinement plan, and land use code amendments and zone changes. Before we begin, I'd like the planning commissioners to introduce themselves and then provide some time for staff to introduce the topic before we start taking testimony. My name is Bill Randall. I'm currently serving as the chair of the Eugene Planning Commission, and the other planning commissioners are, and we'll start with Commissioner Mills.
Jeff Mills.
John Jaworski, Vice Chair.
Stephen Baker.
Kristen Taylor.
And John Borofsky.
Okay, thank you. And tonight we also have the following city staff present. We have Alyssa Hansen, Gabe Flock, and Robin Hostick. And then also Will Dowdy is here, he's back there, and Jennifer Knapp over there from the Planning Division, and Ann Davies is also here from the City Attorney's Office. For each hearing, we'll begin with a brief presentation from staff and then open the public hearing. If anyone in the audience would like to speak, please fill out a request to speak form and bring it forward to staff. There are those green sheets back as you first came in. Testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person. And just a reminder that the Planning Commission will not make a final decision on these proposed amendments. We will, however, be making a recommendation to the City Council, who will hold their own public hearings before making that final decision. So with that, I think we are ready to begin consideration of our first item with a brief presentation from staff. And I believe Alyssa Hansen will be making the staff presentation for the proposed code maintenance amendments.
Yes. Thank you. Tonight's first item, as you mentioned, is a public hearing and possibly action on amendments to the land use code that are related to maintenance of the code. This set of amendments only includes a small number of discrete amendments that address corrective or legal issues, which, if left unaddressed, pose a challenge to the administration of the land use code. These are all issues that have come up recently, and we worked with the City Attorney's Office to compile this list. There are 4 amendments that fall under the corrective category. These are intended to fix errors or conflicts by removing obsolete language, adding language that was inadvertently omitted, correcting code citation references, or correcting a map boundary. The other 4 amendments are legal. They respond to changes in state law, including revisions to Oregon revised statutes and to the Oregon administrative rules, to make sure that our code is really consistent with these newer state regulations. Notice of the public hearing was sent consistent with Eugene code requirements. It was also published in the Register Guard, and all of the information was posted on the Planning Division's code amendment webpage. We've received no testimony to date. As noted in your agenda item summary, the applicable approval criteria are found in section 9.8065 of the Eugene Code. Following the public hearing, your role is to deliberate on the proposed code amendments and provide a recommendation to council. You may do that tonight if you so choose. Otherwise, we have June 8th scheduled for deliberations. These are scheduled to go to a city council public hearing and action mid and late July. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Alyssa. Okay. And so June 8th is the date
Correct.
for that if we decide to deliberate or not deliberate tonight.
Correct.
All right. So with that, I guess I'd like to open the public hearing of the Eugene Planning Commission. And are there any persons wishing to testify? Have we received any green sheets on this one?
I didn't get it.
You didn't get any? No? So no one wishing to testify on the, on the code amendments? Okay. Okay, if you could come up and please state your name and address. And
2560 Oak Street,
okay.
and this may be wrong because some of this stuff's pretty confusing to me. But what I was reading was you can change the code from residential to something else.
Okay.
I think this is South Willamette.
Are you wanting to testify for the South Willamette zone, or the code amendment change, the housekeeping amendments to the code?
Both of them, because I'm upset about both.
Okay.
I'm crazy, but that's all right. The main thing is that on the code, I don't want my property to be changed from anything but residential. Took me a long time to get a down payment to buy it. I am happy with it. I've been fixing on it, spending a lot of money on it. And I don't want somebody to come in and just start telling me I have to do this, this, and this, and one of it is to split the property. One was to make the alleyway a walkway. I'm just telling you, I'm not happy with that, okay?
Okay.
That's all I got on that.
Okay.
I'll wait for the second one.
Okay.
Then I'll be nice.
Thanks. Thank you. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. You're at 2560 Oak. Is that where you live, or is that the property you're talking about that you're concerned with? Okay.
I live on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on the code amendments? For the code change?
Related to code
Related
maintenance.
to code maintenance, yes, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I'll be very,
Okay.
and my comments are more general in nature.
Okay, please state your name and address too. Thank you.
My name's Sue Miller Walesi. Let me spell my last name. I know it's a challenge. It's W-I-E-L-E-S-E-K. My comment on and that is that I hope that as you are thinking about all of the issues with planning the South area, that you'll consider these things. They
Okay,
don't-
are you testifying on the code maintenance amendments or for the South Willamette plan? We have two public hearings tonight, so,
I understand.
okay.
I think probably my comments are very brief, but they do cover both.
Okay.
One is that I hope as you're thinking both about the code specifically and the planning generally, you'll consider the need for cisterns for individuals to put on their property. I think as climate change occurs, there will be more demand for that. And as you can see, that's sort of two different things. Second, as you're thinking about these issues generally, I'd like to ask you to do everything possible to encourage ADUs, secondary dwelling units. And third, this is not a specific code issue or planning issue for you to think about at this time. So it's one of those ideas, I guess, I'd like to ask you to put out of your mind. And that is that you consider the possibility of allowing a third dwelling in some way or another. And I think that any of this consideration on your part should be very much subject to your zoning people and your planning department. Because fitting extra people.
She needs to speak into a microphone.
She is speaking in, yeah.
Thank you.
I want on.
More quiet and
Yeah, please speak loudly, please.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's make sure
It's
it's
on.
on.
Oh, shoot.
Okay,
All right, let me do my best.
much better.
Don't I sound powerful? The things that I wanted to talk about really are very much general in nature. One is that whether or not it deals with the code issues or the larger planning issues, that you give thought to allowing people to install cisterns because of climate change and what is inevitably going to happen. I'd like to have property owners have more flexibility or be able to have a process to do that. Second, I'd like to ask that individuals who want to place an SDU or secondary dwelling unit on their property be encouraged. We've built one of those. We had excellent cooperation and assistance from the planning department. And third, sometimes you have an idea and you aren't sure if it's a great idea. Everybody's stuck coming down here and making loud speeches as an advocate. And I don't feel that way about this issue. But I think that there may be a possibility in some south areas or properties of putting on a third residence or third unit. That may or may not be may or may not be appropriate. And it's one of those things that I would think that the final say, even though it may go against our individualistic theme here in Eugene, that very much that needs to be up to the planning department as having the final say, because that may or may not be appropriate. It may drive your neighbors nuts. So I do apologize if I'm not appearing in the appropriate part of this hearing or hearings.
Thank you. Anyone else want to testify regarding the land use code amendments for code maintenance? Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing. And is there a staff response to testimony offered tonight?
I don't have any response. I do want to note that it would probably be important to have those speakers also repeat their testimony in the second public hearing, because it's probably more relevant to the South Willamette Code amendments.
That was my thought. I guess, would they need to redo that, or could we just also include that in the second public hearing also?
I think we can include that. I've taken notes, and we have the information.
And I think where it does have that overlap, that would be good to include that in the testimony for the South Willamette also. Okay. And any questions the commissioners want to ask of staff? I saw Commissioner Borowski. Okay, Commissioner Baker, then Commissioner Borowski.
Yes, I just wanted to confirm the change to the West University parking exempt area was just an error. It shouldn't have gone across 13th Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes, it should have gone across 13th to the half alley. I realized that the
Right.
map C
But
didn't get attached.
That's what I thought. I mean, that's why remembered from previous discussion.
Right, so yeah, map A actually shows the correct boundary of the West
Right,
University.
right. I just, but I wanted to note that there's also some change to the downtown automobile parking exempt area as well from the first map to the second map.
Right, so the second map was adopted as part of the EWEB Downtown Riverfront Code Amendments, and those changes were intentional.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Nope,
that-
you got it.
Because
So-
the comments don't mention any change to the downtown zone, they just mention changes to the West University
okay.
parking. So you might want to mention that, add a sentence, the downtown automotive parking zone was also modified based on the adopted EWEB,
It actually, in the table,
Okay.
it does mention that under the first issue, under the parking exempt map.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of pages there, so
As it addresses the EWEB change
Yeah.
originally. Yeah. Okay.
maybe it could be clearer, though, so thank you.
Commissioner Borowski.
Yeah, I have a question on the number 6 one in regards to the definition of childcare. In my reading, you mentioned that there was no policy real changes. These are all legally driven. My question is it's raising it from 3 to 4 persons, makes it a daycare thing, up, and from 13 up to 16. Are we mandated by state law? Can we have a more prescriptive? Can we make it 13 at a local level, or do we have to have it at 16? Because in my mind, that is a policy shift if we are allowed to keep it at 13.
So the upper threshold, it's my understanding, and we'll look at Ann, but the upper threshold, it's my understanding that we have to change to be consistent with state law, that it's not a policy choice. And I'll look to Ann. Yeah, so.
So the statute, what the statute did is it changed the number from 13 to 16 for those child care facilities that had to be allowed outright. So we have to change it.
And the lower level?
You want to try that?
The lower level, actually, well, if you want to give the legal answer.
Yeah, it's complicated.
That's why I asked.
So we had, in our definition is daycare. In the statute, it's now called childcare, although at one point it was called daycare in the statutes. And the statutes have this interesting language that's a little bit confusing, but when you get down to it, it really means 4 instead of 3. And do you have that language on you?
I didn't bring the language up, no.
So there's language in the statute that, at least arguably, the drafters of the code originally thought meant 3, but when we looked at it, it really meant 4. So that's why we're going from 3 to 4. And I can probably find that statutory
No,
language.
that's fine. I guess my concern was more, so this is something that is, where in the state, is this, where in the law is this? Is the local jurisdiction, home rule and stuff like that we can't override and have a more prescriptive legal definition of what a daycare center is than the state one?
We can change what our definition of daycare or childcare is, but the statute says this range, so that from 4 to 16, you have to allow outright. And so that's what we're changing.
Okay.
It is prescribed by the statute.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have, my questions I think are fairly easy. It's again on item 6. I see that under 9.050 you've listed a bunch of tables and EC references, and they appear to be in bold.
Correct.
So they are added?
Well, so there's the definition would be the first thing that changes. And then under all of these tables that are listed below, starting with the residential zone, land uses, and permit requirements, all the way down, those all have a use table that lists daycare. And it lists daycare, currently it lists 3 to 12 people served is permitted. Daycare 17 or more requires, or 13 or more requires a conditional use permit. So rather than repeating all of those tables, I just put the table headings, and then the actual edit or revision would be what's in that little tiny box.
I'd ask you to consider a little more clarifying language here to make sure we're crystal clear on what you're doing there. I understand what you're saying, and it sounds reasonable to me.
Okay.
I'd suggest that.
Okay.
And
Thank
then
you.
my other question has to do with item, forgive me here, item number 4. And this is the one that I believe basically, oh no, I'm sorry, excuse me. Getting caught up here. Yeah, it's item number 4, and it has to do with the changing of the notification periods for the application. I'm sorry, it's item number 7.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry to be confused here, but under notice requirements. And my question is, I guess for what was asked here, basically we're allowing electronic submittal, and we've changed the submittal periods.
So correct. The state changed their requirements
Right.
to allow for an electronic submittal.
There's a lot of language change here that doesn't seem to reflect on electronic submittal or period changes.
Okay. Well,
Mostly
we-
deletions. And I just would ask what those are for.
Okay, sure. So previously it said the city shall mail, and so we changed the
Right.
word, we're proposing to change it to submit, because that's what the state calls out in their administrative rule. The state also changes, on occasion, what it is we have to include in that notice. So we thought it would be better to just say that we need to submit the information required by state law. So this is a notice that only the city sends.
I see.
And so just to simplify it, because they honestly do change it from occasion, and they change their form on occasion for us. So just to simplify it, we were pointing to making sure that it's consistent with state law. There's actually a form in the next hearing. You'll probably have noticed that form that starts the South Willamette packet. That's the form we have to send, and it's fairly prescriptive.
Answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
I have one more. Too.
Okay, Commissioner Baker, then Commissioner Borowski.
Yeah, I just wanted to, going back to 6, the table that you show there, are we missing the other part past? In other words, it says daycare, 4 to 16 people served, and then it says daycare, 17 or more people served. Are we missing part of the table? Is that why it looks confusing?
You know, and it's different in every, the table would have the zones where they're permitted or permitted conditionally. And I didn't include that piece.
Okay.
Because we're not
I'm just-
changing that part. The only thing
Okay.
that's changing is that threshold of the number of
Okay,
people
just
served.
wanted to
I realize it's.
confirm this was an extraction.
Yeah, no, I'm realizing that my simplification made it was maybe an
Could I jump in and maybe
oversimplification.
see if maybe I'm understanding this, that under each of those tables, 9.2740 for residential, commercial, special area zones for Chase, downtown, et cetera, there is a portion of that table that says daycare 4 to 6 or 3 to 12, daycare 13 or more, and each of those gets changed in each of those sections to the 4 to 16 or 17 or more to bring that into compliance with state law.
Correct.
Okay.
What is not changing is, whether or
Nothing
not
else-
it's permitted
nothing
or
else changes
conditional,
other than just
or
that
what zones,
definition of
correct.
daycare. Okay.
And I had a couple of corrections in the findings. I figured I might as well pass those on. So under Goal 6, I think the second sentence is the amendments do not rather than to not. Goal 6. In your findings.
Oh, you're right. Got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
And I have a couple more, at least one more, under Goal 12. The last paragraph of Goal 12, the second, well, it's actually the first sentence. The amendments do not change, well, pre-formation, it should be performance.
Okay.
I mean, it's basically, you're repeating.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay, I just figured I might as well get that corrected, so.
Nope, thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner
Spell
Borowski.
check said it was right.
I guess my last question goes back to number 6 again. If we do not make this amendment, would a daycare that had 16 be permitted?
We are actually applying the state law at the counter. We are administering the statute at the counter as opposed to our code. So it's a little confusing if there's somebody right now who wants to operate a daycare out of their home and they look in our code and it's incorrect. So we do have to definitely use the upper end.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions from Commission? Are we ready to make a decision on these tonight? Do we want to deliberate on the 8th? Commissioner Baker.
I had one more question about 6 again. The issue with bicycle and motor vehicle parking standards must also be revised.
So just the table, because you probably recall the bicycle parking standards and the motor vehicle parking standards mirror our use tables in the zones. And so right now it will say daycare 3 to 12 people served. This is the percentage of bicycle parking you have to, or number of bicycle parking. Okay. So we're again just changing the 3 to 12, changing that from 4 to 16.
And the parking is related to the number of...
Right. I actually don't remember how the parking ratio works, but we're not proposing to touch that.
You're not changing the ratios, just the table.
Correct.
For
the use category.
Okay.
I'm ready to take action.
Okay.
I move.
Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to accept the code amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that moved and seconded? Any discussion? Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, one of the things that I asked Alyssa was to make some language changes to clarify, so I'm a little at a loss here voting to accept without seeing that language or hearing it, so.
I think what you're asking is to actually see the full table? Is that?
No. I believe my suggestion was to add some clarification so that the intent of the related table listings was more clearly stated.
Okay.
So I guess I'm having a hard time voting for it until I see that.
So are you asking for the summary to be updated? Is that what you're asking for, or the
No,
actual?
it just wasn't clear,
Okay.
And can I make a suggestion here? Because I think I understand what Commissioner Mills is saying. In the sentence right before the table, where it says, under the residential, commercial, and bicycle and motor vehicle parking standards below, references to daycare need to be revised as follows. I'm wondering if you added language such that it said references to daycare in each of the following sections and tables need to be revised as follows. Would that address your concerns, Commissioner Mills?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I could do that.
I'm just thinking if
No,
we
that's
can
helpful.
do that now.
Should have probably done that while we were talking.
That's okay. Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, I was also thinking it might be better. I mean, what you've done is extracted 2 lines from different tables and put them together. Maybe make them separate lines, so to speak.
Okay.
And say where this line applies, and then below the other one where this line applies. So it's clear that they're not next to each other or whatever.
They actually are next to each other.
They are right next to each other?
Yeah, in the use list, they're actually next to each other. I think what I needed to do is provide a sample use list, and then that would make it easier. So, but that's good advice.
Okay. But do you think the wording that we just suggested would cover that?
Do you need to have an amendment to the motion to include those words?
Yeah, no?
No, I mean, that's something I can, you're not proposing to change any of the code amendment language. You're proposing to change how it's described. So,
Okay.
which is helpful.
Good question, though. Okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of recommending to council the code maintenance changes signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. We'll begin consideration now of our second agenda item with a brief presentation from staff on the South Willamette Special Area Zone. Gabe Flock, I believe, from the Planning Division will be making this presentation.
Thank you. Just some brief introductory comments. So the subject of the second hearing, as you noted earlier, is a package of city-initiated plan amendments, code amendments, and zone changes to implement the South Willamette Concept Plan by putting in the necessary regulatory framework in place to help facilitate the long-term redevelopment of the area through the new South Willamette Special Area Zone. The adoption package represents the culmination of several years of public outreach and planning work to date in developing the Special Area Zone, and this hearing is one of the necessary formal steps leading toward formal adoption by the City Council later this year. And as we've discussed at Planning Commission meetings leading up to this point, the hope is that the formal plan designation changes and code amendments will help to transform the district into a vibrant, pedestrian-friendly mixed-use area over the long term. It's a key part of our Envision Eugene strategies and really serves as a pilot project regarding our area planning efforts, as well as to support policies related to neighborhood livability, economic development, and well-designed redevelopment along our key transportation corridors. So we've covered the proposed amendments in pretty great detail at a number of planning commission meetings leading up to this point. So I won't go into detail about those now. I'm sure we'll hear testimony specific to individual properties and those specific code changes. But I would note that the packet has the full draft code, the parcel-specific map showing changes to each of the properties for both the proposed zoning as well as the Metro Plan designation changes. And we also have a full set of findings addressing the approval criteria for each of the application types. Just for the record, I'd note that the approval criteria for the code amendments are found in Eugene Code 9.8065. The criteria for the Metro Plan amendments are at Eugene Code 9.7735. The refinement plan amendments are governed by Section 9.8424, and the zone change criteria are subject to 9.8865. Just as a formality for the record, we need to cite those criteria. And again, the findings address those in pretty good detail. So the role of the Planning Commission after hearing testimony tonight will be to deliberate and ultimately to make a recommendation to the City Council later this summer. And we're tentatively set for deliberations at this point beginning on June 15th. That should allow time for an open record period if we need it, and we can discuss that after the testimony tonight as to how long and whether or not that might affect our schedule. Before we start the testimony, I'd also like to direct the Commissioner's attention to a packet of written testimony. I put a couple copies up there for you to look at tonight if folks make reference to that, or if you'd like to look through it. We'll also provide that electronically so you all have a full set of it, as well as any written testimony that comes in tonight or during the open record period. We'll make sure you have all of that prior to deliberations. So with that, I'll bring up the request to speak forms.
Thank you, Gabe. So with that, I'd like to open the public hearing of the Eugene Planning Commission. And as your name is called, and maybe in the interest of time, Commissioner Jaworski, if you could read the person coming up as well as the one that will be following, so that when you're next up, you can be ready to come up just in the interest of time. Please give your name and address before beginning your testimony. And because of the volume of people wishing to speak, we will be limiting testimony to 3 minutes per person. And as a courtesy tonight, we would ask that when the buzzer does go off, if you exceed your 3 minutes or hit your 3 minutes, that you would wrap up your testimony. And we would also encourage you to submit any written testimony that you have as well. And so with that, Commissioner Jaworski.
Our first speaker will be Will Scherer, followed by John Lawless. Lawless. It's the same as
Apologize for the poor handwriting there. Will Shaver, 2494 Portland Street, Eugene, which is one of the houses that looks to be upzoned to a row house character required. Generally, I like density. When Network Charter School came to ask for a use of their property as a school instead of as a church facility, as it was a couple years ago, I testified in favor of that. Generally in favor of building denser, which is why I moved to this part of Eugene from West Eugene, where it's not nearly as dense. Tonight, I have a little bit of an issue with the property directly across the street from my house. If you'll refer to page 43 of your handout, you will see that there is one piece of property on Portland Street that is zoned mixed use, and the remainder of the property on Portland Street is zoned either high density or medium density residential. So the one piece of property that's zoned mixed use is, of course, across the street from my house, to the east of my house. I don't really like the idea of the potential for a bar or a number of other mixed use options to be directly east of my property when that's not the case for the remainder of Portland Street. If we decide, if as a whole we were doing that to all of Portland Street, it would feel not quite as inequitable. Then if you look at page 79, you will see that same piece of property, and stop me if you're not understanding what I'm talking about, that same piece of property has some dotted step-down lines required for the heights just to the north of that piece of property, but for some reason those little dotted step-down lines do not extend south to the piece of property that is on the corner of 25th and Portland. Pausing to let you see it on the map. Nod at me when you see what I'm seeing here.
That's fine.
Excellent. Thank you. So, I would put my 2 cents in as generally liking the plan, concerned about a couple of things across the street from my house. A number of neighbors are concerned about the 7-story, 29th and Portland area, but they know a lot more about that than I do. But across the street from my house, mixed use, 5 stories, no step down, it's concerning. So some revision and attention to detail there would be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
John Lawless, followed by Philippe Alonso, the third.
Good evening. My name is John Lawless. I live at 90 East 26th Avenue, kind of right in the heart of the South Willamette zone. I've been there 30 years, and I'm here to speak to you in support of the changes that are being proposed here. In 30 years, I bought the place with the understanding of what my development opportunities were at the time, and they were okay because I have corner lots. I actually own 3 properties. And the aspiration was to help densify the neighborhood because I grew to appreciate all of the amenities that this small pocket really offered. It continues to offer that. Change is difficult. I completely understand that. It will be for me too. I theoretically won't be able to implement my original kind of meager plan of converting a single family into a duplex because of a corner lot. I won't be able to do that in the future with the zone change, but I'll be pushed to higher aspirations. I'll be pushed to doing things a different way so that I can contribute to the neighborhood growth and vitality and the density that it is going to take to support a real change. Change is hard, as I said. It's slow. In these regards, Eugene has to be patient with itself. It has to allow the understanding of what the inevitable changes of the evolution of an area are going to be driven to because of the nature of the desirability. I view all of the density of the commercial developments. I have tolerated the cars backing over the sidewalk as I try to walk to the restaurant, but I know those things are fixable. I know the street improvements are coming. I know that's going to be a big, big, big fix. It's going to make the neighborhood even more desirable in terms of getting to all of those support amenities so that I don't have to drive my car when I get older than I am now. So I urge that you listen carefully to everybody, but my opinion is that this is supportable. It's a step in the right direction, and it'll help Eugene move to the next 600 or 700 more years it needs to really mature. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Philippe Alonso III, followed by Bob Larson.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Felipe Alonso.
Felipe, okay.
I live at 2971 Portland Street. I submitted these comments earlier. I'd just like to go ahead and pass out another copy. I think since the comments explained pretty thoroughly my main concern, which is the increase in height on Portland Street, but I think the most helpful thing for our discussion here is to point you to the figure 9.3854, which is on PDF page 23 of 83 of the South Willamette Plan, which shows the height limitations for the various areas. And once you're there, we can discuss where I am and my concerns.
Page 79 of the pack.
Of our AIS. Thank you.
Is everyone on the same page now? This
so.
is the fun color one. I'm on Portland Street between 29th and 30th Avenue. And you will notice that my house in particular is in the dark blue zone, which is 7-story max building height. It is the very first dark blue house on the east side of Portland Street. And my concern is, as I say in my comments, we have my wife and I, who unfortunately has work right now, or I have a few more minutes, would have a single-family home. We bought it in 2013. We like living there. We're concerned that theoretically under this plan, 27 feet across Portland Street, which is only 27 feet, you could build a 7-story building. And currently it's zoned R1, residential. There's a duplex there. It's going to go from R1, low density, across the street with no step up, no gradualism, to immediately high density, 7 stories. Unlike other parts of the plan, where you'll see various special considerations for step downs, you'll see that all around the marketed choice area, which is the only other part of the map that's allowed to 7 stories. It's completely surrounded by a step down. If you go up and down Willamette, Portland Street to Willamette, everywhere else there's step downs. There's been no consideration whatsoever of someone living at a single-story house and having suddenly a 7-story building right in front of them or directly to the side of them when there's nothing comparable to that anywhere in the neighborhood. And I'm afraid that ultimately it will undermine the character and nature of our neighborhood, which currently is a small three-block street, dead ends on one end. It's basically, at this point, primarily all the way down Portland Street, single-family houses. It's not on a transportation corridor. It's not on a thoroughfare. There's no reasonable, cognizable explanation for why this particular spot has been designated in the way that the map has indicated. And I believe that's the end of my time.
That is. Thank you.
And I would appreciate you also to read my comments in full. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will read these.
Bob Larson, followed by Pam Woodell.
Well, I'm a neighbor of Felipe, and I share his concerns. I'm on the corner of 30th and Portland Avenue, in a single-family home. We've lived there for over 14 years. And now the ground across the street from us has all been purchased by the Cascade Manor, who's presently building a property down on 29th down to the commercial zoning. And the new zoning that you have in front of you is to change my street, 30th Avenue, down to 30th to 29th Avenue, all to heavy density R2, R3, or R4, and to have the same kind of structure available that they're building presently just down the street. It's made a huge impact in our neighborhood. The parking is terrible. The service vehicles are constantly going up and down the street, emergency vehicles, and this is without even the finish of the facility that they're building at the present time. I am requesting that there's a buffer zone put in between 30th Avenue and 29th Avenue from Portland up to Cascade Manor, and that to be to protect us like you've done in the university area from the heavy density. My suggestion would be on 30th Avenue to have it remain R1 and halfway through the lot to go down to R2 and then across 29th Avenue to, that's the zoning that they just are building these tall apartment houses, and where the seven-story building is going to be built. They've built 3.5 stories right now, just down at the end of the property, and that is up to, my estimate, about 50 feet tall. And they want to build one of those right across the street from my home. And all I have is single-family homes there right now. So it's going to be quite shocking to have that in that neighborhood. So that's about all I have to say, and I do have one written page. Where do I turn that in at?
Do you just have one copy? If you could give that to Gabe, then he'll make sure we get copies.
The rest of the plan, I don't have an opinion about. It's just that one block.
Okay. Thank you.
Pam Woodell, followed by Anna Kate Malliris.
My name's Pam Woodell. I live at 52 East 23rd Avenue, which is a half block off of Willamette to the east. We are a one-block, no-through street of single-family houses currently zoned R1, and the proposed new zoning jumps up to apartment and condo. I've submitted a letter, so I'm going to not just read everything that's in the letter, but I have concerns about the whole plan in general, but I see some of the things as favorable. My concern is in particular for my street, which is a very stable, safe street at this time, and having a sudden this kind of change in the designation on a street that only has one access to Willamette. There is an alley, but that is sometimes blocked. We are at the part of Willamette Street where it's still 2 lanes, and so sometimes making left turns is difficult, and when there's traffic in the morning and the evenings, I just see that getting worse if can suddenly go to 56 units per acre, which if they got, I don't think, maybe 4 properties, it could be an acre. But I fear that, if we get this designation, it'll put a dark cloud over our neighborhood, and we won't know whether to make improvements or, if somebody comes in, they'll just bulldoze the houses, which are really nice houses. They were built in the 50s. They're real solid. We've all made improvements and done major remodels. And a number of us plan to live there the rest of our lives. But it gets like, well, gee, do I paint it? Do I put the nice windows in or the cheap things? Do I put any more plants in? Because it'll just be dozed. It'll be high density. And it's just so many of us feeling this way on the street. It's not like we have high things all around us already. It's just, it's just I wish this neighborhood for everybody. Having a no-through street is wonderful. Kids can play in the street. Anyway, so that's one of the main things. I have some concerns in general. I feel like it would be more important to get the core right, and then it seems like the neighborhood, the side streets would develop more naturally if the core part of it is attractive, Willamette Street. And I think some of the major things that would make Willamette Street more attractive aren't going to happen, like taking down the phone poles and dealing with the wires, because when you just look at the street, that's kind of like the biggest thing that's ugly. And then some of the things that cause water to pool in the street, so when pedestrians go by, they get splashed when it rains. Some of these simpler fixes would be really nice. So anyway, and I don't see anything in the plan that deals with climate change, allowing for making sure that one building doesn't block solar access to another building. when I was in Nepal a bunch of years ago, every single shower I took was a solar heated shower, and that was back in 1995. And why we don't have that here now, I don't know. And so I would hate to think of tall buildings then blocking, I think everybody has a right to solar access, so I just think that hasn't been addressed. Anyway, I guess that's the main things. Okay, I'll end that. I submitted a letter. And I know not all my neighbors can be here, but if I send a petition around my neighborhood, there's only 12 houses, by the way, and 75% of it's owner occupied. Every single name would be on that petition, and I probably should do that. But a number of us are here. We're not all speaking.
Thank you.
Anna Kate Maliris, followed by Dennis Cassidy.
I'm Anna Kate Malaris, and I'm at 90 East 23rd Avenue, so I'm a neighbor of Pam's. And there are 13 residences.
Can you repeat your address?
90 East 23rd Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are 13 residences on this street. The average length of residency home ownership is over 25 years. There are 5 people here. My 80-year-old mother, who's lived in her house for 45 years, is not able to be here. What you're talking about is destroying a neighborhood, because I don't want to live by a 5-story building that blocks my privacy and takes away this really unique, wonderful neighborhood. We're a 1-block street. Pam alluded to this. We have 1 exit point. 13 houses, and we can barely get out on Willamette Street during rush hour, and you want 54. You're destroying a street and a neighborhood, and I don't get it. And when I asked myself, because I also submitted a letter, what's wrong with this? My answer was, I went back to the American Planning Association's president, and he said planning's about social justice. And I don't see social justice in this, because you're not going up the street where the houses are expensive. You're going down the street where they're middle-class houses. I live there. I've lived there for 37 years. I live 2 doors away from my mom. There's nothing just about this. When I track the money, it's for developers. It's not for me. I live in that house. I paid for it. It's mine. And the people who will benefit from this are people who have more money to develop bigger places. And it will run the neighborhood out. And I don't get it. So I don't see any social justice in that, and I don't think it's about people.
Thank you.
Dennis Cassidy, followed by Sharon Aquazila.
My name's Dennis Cassidy, Post Office Box 5028, Eugene, 97405.
Hold the mic up a little bit. I think people can hear better.
Okay, and Dennis Cassidy, and you've seen me at all of the Planning Commission meetings, and I've waited a long time for this. I have 4 properties that are directly affected by this, and I'm in support of the change. 1 property I've had for 44 years. And so I'm just short and sweet, and I just want to state that I'm in favor of the change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Aquazila. That's not a Z? Okay, looked like a Z.
2560 Oak Street.
Okay, followed by Colin MacArthur.
Okay, I'm against the changes for what a lot of people have said, but I'm also a very basic type of person. My changes include higher crime rate. My changes include streets that are currently residential streets that are being used by the semis to deliver. My concern is watching the Willamette Street as 4 lanes and sit there and watch as far as I can see the traffic is backed up, because, trying to get through. Where's the outs for people that are traveling down Willamette? Where is the fairness when you have people that are paying the taxes for your property? City tells you have to take care of the sidewalk, you got to take care of the grass area, you're responsible for the part in front. where's the stuff for us to protect us and our rights and the things that we've done in this place? I have sit there and watched, and my sister's family, I don't know how you call in-laws, but all of those people, they were building down there on Oak Street. They own a bunch of those houses down there, and they try to take care of them. And where we run into a lot of problems down there, you put up 7 stories. Has anybody thought about how you're going to get connection to the internet? How you're going to get phone access, since the phones are all cell phones, smartphones, dumb people? But the towers are up there, and they're all going to be blocked by these high buildings. What about the water level? Right now, you can go down there, and the street level, the water is high. It's coming down off the west side and coming on down, and it goes through my property on down to the next block over. And the water level during the winter, you can squish it. What is going to be taking care of that? What's going to be taking care of all of the piping and the everything, just your hands-on stuff, the everyday type of things that need to be considered in this plan? I don't like what I've seen so far. People are doing it for, oh, this is great. They get more money for their property. But I'm like those ladies, I don't want to sell. I finally found a little niche that I can call home. I like that little village that we have. People help each other. You put a high rise there, who's going to know who? No one. Lived in that kind of situation. It's not fun. This is fun. Don't ruin it. Enjoy what we have. There's other areas, if you want to do pilot shows and stuff. Okay, I'm going to get in trouble for this. But go to a rich area. Take that houses and add stores to it. And see how they would like it. All we wanted somebody to come in and fix Willamette so it was safer for us and for the traveling public. And what do we get? Changing the streets to a 1 lane each direction, put a turn lane in the middle that nobody will be able to use.
That's your 3 minutes.
Oh, I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
It's not real loud. I don't
Okay,
have a
that
problem
was it. I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Colin MacArthur, followed by Andrew Fisher.
Colin MacArthur, 160 East Broadway. I'm testifying on behalf of Cascade Manor. Cascade Manor operates a retirement center campus at 29th Avenue and Portland Street and owns several parcels that have redevelopment potential under the proposed code changes. Generally, we support the proposed code plan, zoning amendments, and adoption of the South Willamette Special Area Plan. We think the code is a step in the right direction and appreciate the work the planning staff has done to anticipate transformation of the area and streamline development processes. We strongly support the clarifications to the use schedule to permit retirement centers and their accessory services outright in SSW, the apartment condo subdistrict. We are concerned with a couple aspects of the development code that may impact redevelopment as we are currently envisioning for a master plan for the campus. Cascade Manor made a choice a long time ago to be committed to staying in South Eugene and has since operated a successful retirement center that is thriving and expanding and has done the best that they can under the current zoning. We've summarized recommended changes to the code in written comments that were submitted to Gabe earlier today. Specifically, the master plan contemplates 4-story row house, townhouse style apartments on 30th Avenue. This would allow us to provide 3 levels of residential with a podium level for parking, which would address some of the parking issues. Currently, the code prohibits or limits height to 3 stories at 30th Avenue. We also support the change to 7 stories in the heart of the Portland 29th Street block. The code does not have a 4-story option. It only provides a 5-story option. If there were a 4-story option for 30th, we would be in favor of that. The other piece we'd like the Planning Commission to look at is the street typology applied to West 29th Place. We think the street typology with 10-foot sidewalks, 7-foot parking, and travel lanes could result in a need for additional right-of-way acquisition. We think that the sidewalk width may be more than we need for future redevelopment. There's a bit narrower street cross-section, that is the street typology G, which has 8-foot sidewalks, 7-foot parking, and 2 travel lanes. We'd be able to provide a little more landscape buffer in between the buildings. I think that sidewalk width would be sufficient. So we'd recommend that Planning Commission look at typology G instead of typology I for the West 29th Place right-of-way. Otherwise, I'd like to reiterate that we support the project and the entire adoption package, and appreciate all the work the staff has done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Andrew Fisher, followed by Lena Houston Davison.
Hello, my name is Andrew Fisher. I reside at 2450 Jackson, and I'm a volunteer member of the Friendly Area Neighbors Association. I'm here tonight to speak primarily as a neighborhood resident and to offer some feedback on the proposed changes. I support efforts to help guide the South Willamette area as it develops over time. My first involvement with this project as a neighborhood volunteer goes back to 2011 with the South Willamette Concept Plan. And as up until recently, newsletter editor of the neighborhood, I've regularly tried to provide quarterly updates so that neighbors can be informed and participate in the conversations. It's my perception that a lot of neighbors, business owners have participated, but as a volunteer, I know it's always a challenge to get people to attend meetings, to become informed. And so I would like to encourage the Commission to consider that there are probably still neighbors living in the area who are not aware of this planning process. I frequently both drive and walk along South Willamette, and I would like to see better sidewalk conditions in the area and safety improvements for the families, for the elderly, for everyone. Anyone who has visited the area has probably seen that development is already happening. The Cascade Manor expansion, although not in this specific district, we're seeing student-type housing up in the northeast corner starting to develop by Civic Stadium. And I do believe that redevelopment is inevitable. I tend to believe it's better to have planning in place than to not have any planning. The proposed height restrictions and the setbacks that are immediately along Willamette, I think, will help to preserve the view of the butte and of the topology around the area, which contributes to the character and identity of the neighborhood. So I do support that. I think in conversations I've had with folks over the year, a lot of them do expect that things will be upgraded, especially in the blocks that are the block immediately off and right along Willamette. But it's less clear to me how well received this is to when you start talking about 2 or more blocks off of the corridor. And in my capacity as a volunteer for the neighborhood, I can tell you that we've already had concerns ongoing about parking in the area, about congestion, about sanitation, recycling bins being blocked, driveways being blocked, all kinds of anecdotal stories that people have come to the board and expressed. I appreciate the city's desire to promote alternative modes of transportation. But I do think that if there's going to be any initial growing pains, or some of them are going to be around parking, as I've indicated, and so I want to encourage you to really carefully consider the parking requirements that you may be putting forward. Is that my time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Lena Houston Davison. Following is Annette Gurgian.
Hello, my name is Lena Houston Davison. I live at 47 East 23rd Avenue, and that's the little small dead-end street just off of Willamette. And I want to state, generally, I'm in favor of growth and improving and increasing the density, especially along the Willamette Street corridor and in that area. But I think this particular little pocket is not really conducive to that, and it does destroy what is, to me, the epitome of why I live in Eugene and the little neighborhood that I have. I've lived in this residence for 22 years, and I've worked really hard to maintain that and upgrade it, and my hope is that that is where I'm going to retire and live out my life. I do walk along South Willamette Street. That's been my neighborhood for a long time. I really like it. This is a little neighborhood where people know each other. There's people retiring. There's also young children. Parking is challenging on this street. We have a lot of people now that work in the neighboring area that park along our street every day, and so a lot of the parking is taken up. The houses on the north side, which is where my lot is, are very small lots. They're like 60 by 90. They have an easement for the sewer main on the back side, so it doesn't give a lot of space for much expansion and growth on that side. And so if there's going to be 5-foot structures across the street, my concern also is that's going to block sunlight. Right now, we're a neighborhood where we grow gardens, we share tools, we watch out for each other. As a victim of abuse and personal crimes against me in the past, this has been a very safe neighborhood for me, that I know my neighbors, I know who lives there. I don't have a problem like along Willamette Street. There's already some multi-unit houses there for that area west of the north-south alley. For that to be developed a little more, that's great. And I don't mind commercial around me. That's all fine. But I think it's more conducive. I think over along like the 24th Place area that's designated more single-family option is a better situation for this little pocket of place. And I would also be opposed to opening it to Amazon Parkway. It's tucked between Willamette Street and Amazon Parkway. It's too close to 24th. Amazon Parkway backs up a really long ways trying to make any kind of entrance and exit there. I don't think it's feasible. Right now our only exit is out of Willamette Street or the small alley. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Annette Gergion, followed by Martha Riley.
Hello. I would like to refer you to page 61 of the PC agenda sheet. I want to comment on section 9.3840, the special area zones permitted use, specifically number 3, residential uses, and more specifically, multifamily uses. Multifamily uses permitted in South Willamette, specifically the AC, are apartment, condominiums, row houses, and retirement center apartments. I object to the inclusion of retirement center apartments, also known as assisted living, as a permitted use. I currently live in a single-family house at 95 West 30th, which is just outside this new boundary, actually borders right on it. And I live in a single-family home. I've lived there for 30 years that I own. It's next door to the Cascade Manor Tower. The tower was built in 1965 in an inappropriate location, surrounded on all sides by single-family homes. Retirement centers are not compatible with residential neighborhoods. The fact that the residents need assistance makes the retirement center different from multifamily buildings. They have a lot of staffing needs, which require parking, in addition to the retirement center's residents' parking needs. They have multiple food deliveries, since residents eat at least one meal daily in a dining hall. This is not the case in an apartment building or a condominium. Garbage trucks come by daily. In the 30 years, in my particular case, the retirement home's mechanical system creates white noise 24 hours a day. And I have had the city come out and measure, and it is just under the decibel where they would have to stop. I feel like they should be listed under institutional use, or at the very least, not allowed in medium or low-density zonings. I also want to comment on a piece of property that I own at 2974 Portland Street, which is currently zoned R1 low-density residential, and I would not like to see this change to apartments or condominiums. Over the years, Cascade Manor has slowly changed the fabric of the neighborhood, and I just feel like it's going to continue to do so until there is no neighborhood left. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martha Riley, followed by Sue Miller Wheelesick.
Hello, my name is Martha Riley. I live at 2161 Madison. I walk in my neighborhood, I shop in my neighborhood, I drive my car in my neighborhood. Currently, I cycle everywhere but my own neighborhood. I never cycle down South Willamette. I would love to cycle down South Willamette and run my errands there. I would love to be able to park my car in one place and run all my errands, walk back to my car, walk back to my house. I see the South Willamette corridor changes as making it possible for more of us to be out on the street, on our feet, on our bikes. I'll be one less car. My neighbors who own businesses there will see more of me once these changes go through. And that's really all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Miller Wheelesick, followed by Timothy Forrester.
I also live in what's usually called the College Hill neighborhood. I appreciate the job that you folks have to do. I know it's thankless. I'm sure the pay is quite poor. And I appreciate the fact that your planning department has a very difficult job with a city that's expanding rapidly. We're not the small town that we were where you knew everybody. We're turning into a big city. I've listened very carefully to the people here, and I know all of these streets where the women speakers live. I know how Cascade Manor now towers over us. You need to go back to the drawing board. You can do better. This has to turn into a big city in a way that European cities have many people living comfortably in a small area. That certainly is much harder to do in a city that was a big cow town. But you can do it. I have an enormous amount of confidence. You can allow people to have more dwellings on their property. You don't need to have 7-story buildings. You can step up gradually. You know how to do it. You guys aren't dumb at all. So sorry, I just sound like such a dissatisfied citizen. But I think you can do better.
Thank you.
Timothy Forrester, followed by Christina Lang.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Forrester. I own, with my wife, an office building at 3003 Willamette Street for 25 years. And we think it's a great neighborhood, but we would like to see a little bit broader perspective of what can be in the neighborhood. For example, we have a conditional use permit for medical, which we appreciate, but we'd also like to have other professionals in the neighborhood to broaden out the kind of people and services that we have in the neighborhood. I support this plan, and the only thing I'd like to say on the negative side was we have solar panels on our home, and we think everyone should have access to solar. So if there's any issue in terms of height on Portland Street and so on, I think everyone has a right to have sunshine and not be blocked by 7, 8, 9, 10-story building. So I haven't read the whole plan, so I can't really reply on the Portland Street issue, but I think solar access is extremely important. And again, I support this plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Christina Lang, followed by David Newison.
Hi, Christina Lang, 2848 High Street. First of all, I really support the density, increasing density in this neighborhood. I've lived there for 5 years, owned my home for 5 years there, and it's a gem of an area. You've got so many amenities nearby, and I think that it's really ripe for increasing that. I also walk on Willamette Street with my 2 small children, and it's kind of frightening now with cars zooming by, and I think it's going to be great to have more shopping and restaurants and the density on Willamette and the development of the sidewalks. It's going to be great. I've been involved in this process for quite a while now, since I moved there, basically, and I've been to a lot of the meetings, and I feel like there's just this overwhelming amount of material now to review, and I would just love to encourage you to keep the record open, and so that other people have a chance to comment. And I have some very specific comments that from what I have had a chance to review that I'd like to submit to Jennifer Knapp. And but specifically to my street, I live on High Street between 28th and 29th, and it's a cut through from people. They just shoot off of Amazon Parkway to cut through to 29th Street and turn around to go to Willamette. So, and it's also the narrowest street on that section of single-family properties there. It's not wide enough for 2 cars to pass if there's parking on either side, and so the street zone typology lists that our street would have parking only on one side. Our neighbors are really concerned about that, because then right now the only thing slowing cars down are the fact that they can't pass each other, and they have to kind of pull over and let somebody else by. So we're worried that it's going to become, Amazon Parkway Junior, and so we would like to see some traffic calming, possibly block or close off the end of our street so that it's not a pass-through. Just that increasing the density I'm in favor of, but then we have to look at the traffic increase also, and safety for our street. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll try again. David Nelkin, followed by Suzanne Forrester.
Good evening. Is this mic on?
No.
Okay. How's that?
That's better. Thank
Okay. David Nelkin, 2472 Willamette Street. I've been a merchant on Willamette Street now for 35 years. It seems as though the commercial zone change on Willamette Street boils down to a gift of 15 feet of right-of-way for the city in exchange for less parking requirements and greater height on buildings for the zone, size of the lot. And my question is, will property owners be compensated for the 15 feet of right-of-way? I don't know if anybody has thought about that. And will the city, in that new right-of-way, pay for the burying of the power lines and the utilities? And what happens when the property is developed piecemeal? It's not all going to happen at once, if at all. How will the power line be dealt with? And who should be responsible for paying it? And will this be written into the plan, into this zone area plan. And how do we deal with this issue? It's being left up in the air. And previously, I brought up the issue of condemnation. What if a property owner is one of the last ones on the street and doesn't want to convert their property? How does this zone plan deal with condemnation? And I was told, well, we'll deal with that later. But, as older I get, the more cynical I get, and the less I believe that if it's not spelled out initially, then somehow down the line the process won't work. As an aside, 10 years ago, I spoke before the Planning Commission and the city about a nodal development in this area, this is really nodal development number 2. And the Planning Commission at that time approved it, and the City Council defeated it. It was the wrong plan at the wrong time. But in my thoughts on this, I tend to agree with what the city is doing. I think we need to have some of these concerns that I brought up ironed out in the plan before it's given to the council to vote on. And I generally agree that the zone change is going to be good for the city and good for the area. And lastly, I'd like to say that one of the things that's not addressed in here, which a lot of people have alluded to, is the parking. The city is going to need to somehow, either by itself or in a public-private partnership, come up with some way of increasing the parking in the area. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Suzanne Forrester, followed by Christina Sioblum.
Good evening. Susan Forrester, 3003 Willamette Street. I'm a co-owner of an office building on Willamette Street since 1989. And it's interesting being here tonight. We bought a piece of property that was 300 feet deep by 75 feet wide that was completely covered in brambles and had been sort of overlooked in this 29th to the Y with Donald and Willamette Street for a very long time, apparently. And we offered to put in a building basically full of mental health counselor type people. And we had to fight pretty hard to ask permission, and the city gracefully accepted our proposal. And since 1989, we have been cohabiting fairly peaceably on this 29th to the Y, as I call it, section of Willamette Street. So I can only really address Willamette Street and not any of the side roads off Willamette Street, as we've been hearing. I think my main observation today, we've been there obviously over 25 years, is that I would love to see a transition between 29th and Willamette to the Y, a sort of slowing down and a sort of more of a fun, diversified appeal to this very important part of Willamette Street. And I was looking at the sheet that we were given in the mail, and it says that the city wants to transform the district into a vibrant, multimodal, pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use neighborhood. And frankly, for me, that completely hits it right on the nail. We are not a residential entity on Willamette Street, yes, but we have gone to great gains with sort of landscaping and just being absorbed in a very natural way into Willamette Street. But I kind of call this section of Willamette more a bit of a dead zone. It is a fast-paced dead zone, and I realize that's a very sort of contradictory statement. But if there is any way that the city can make it more vibrant and diversified, I think we as owners of the 3003 Willamette would greatly appreciate it. And it is a terrific part of town. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Christina Soblum, followed by Valerie Metcalf.
Good evening. I'm Christina Schoblum, and I live on 88 West 29th Avenue. My husband and I moved up 2 months ago in our retirement. We bought our house in 2007, and we're technically not in this area because we're right on the other side of Cascade Manor. But we do not like the prospect of having an 8-story building next to our house because we fear that we will live in perpetual shadow, shade, darkness if this big building goes up. And that's about our only concern about this. If you could get down the traffic on 29th Avenue, we'll be very happy about that, if that could be less. But other than that, we don't feel that we have a lot to say for or against because we haven't lived here enough. So, but we do oppose to this 8-story building that might come up on next to a Cascade Manor.
Thank you.
Valerie Metcalf, and this is our last speaker.
Hi, my name is Valerie Metcalf. I also live on East 23rd Avenue on the north end of these proposed zoning changes. In general, I am against the zoning changes for the periphery streets off of Willamette. You said this redevelopment plan supports livability in South Eugene, Willamette Street area, but how does 3 to 5 story multi-unit housing add to livability? I have seen density increase in Eugene, particularly in South Eugene, with little or no regard for neighborhood charm or livability. We are seeing more and more single-family homes being bought up, torn down, and large-scale multi-housing units go up, in some cases filling half a city block, shadowing the remaining single-level, single-family dwellings next door. I urge city planners to, on one measure, expand the urban growth boundary to accommodate growth, and in particular to these zoning proposed changes, limit the zoning changes on the side streets of Willamette to no more than 2-story units in order to preserve the character and livability of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm taking notes here, sorry. Okay. Has anyone not had a chance to testify that wants to? We've gone through our green slips. Okay. I see 2. If you could, 3. If you could go ahead and come up, but maybe we can be sure that they get a green slip to turn in. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, my name is Sylvia Hart. I live in Patterson Tower, so I'm obviously a pro-growth, pro-high building person, and that's at 1080 Patterson Street. And I own a duplex that's 285-295 East 29th Street. And I didn't plan to speak today because I've actually submitted some kind of statement at some of the one of the other meetings, simply approving that I'm happy that it's been zoned, that strip from going east from Willamette to High Street on East 29th has been zoned for row houses, which I think is a great idea. I was just prompted to speak today because the gentleman who's talking about Cascade Manor suggested that there be row houses that are 4 stories high. And I think at present the zoning is for 3 stories in that little strip that runs from Willamette to High on East 29th. And I think 4 stories would work very well, and I think would actually allow a more gracious kind of living for people who are in those row houses. I doubt that there would be more density. I think there would be the same number of people living with more space and a little bit more elegance. So, and I don't see that it's going to create more shade either, because they're on both sides of the street, these houses facing each other. So I would say just just proposing that. And I'm a person who walks a lot. And at an earlier meeting, I urged that consideration be given to people who walk down Willamette, and changes in the traffic patterns lately, including the bike lane, have made it much safer to walk down toward 11th, 13th or 11th. And I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please be sure to fill out a green slip. I think Will got that for you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matt Laubach. I live at 184 East 26th Avenue in Eugene, which is the corner of 26th and High. And I understand that we're in this situation because we had a wonderful governor back in the 70s named Governor McCall, who established a very unique thing in the nation, which was having urban growth boundaries to limit growth to cities and certain areas and not having it expand into the farmland. So this is very unique in Oregon that I think is a good thing. So, but with that is the quandary of how we have to densify our other neighborhoods just to have the farmland preserved. So I guess that's just part of living in a city. And so I've been going to some of these meetings, and some of the things I do like that have been going on, at least there is a plan so that we're not going to see the capstone project, which goes all the way to the street. I mean, that and it covers the entire ground. I mean, I think that is one thing I would like to see avoided, that this plan does help protect. So, but on the other hand, I've lived in my neighborhood for like 20 some odd years. Oh, another thing I like about it is the walkable community idea. I am in favor of seeing the experiment with the striped streets, so that there are bike lanes going all the way up Willamette. I think that will be a good thing. But on the other hand, I have been talking to some of the neighbors when the first plans came out. They didn't like the idea of seeing 7-story buildings, and neither do I. I also am concerned about the solar access. Protecting solar access is very important. And I'm also concerned about crime, because ever since I've lived here, I mean, it was a low crime area, but the crime seems to be increasing. I've had to call the police several times because people have been invading my property since I don't have a fence. They've been stealing things from me. And so I've seen the crime go up. And the more density that happens, the more crime happens. And so, and I also do appreciate from this plan, having bicycle access going from the Amazon Parkway to 24th Place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jenny John. I have been a participant in these meetings as well for many, many years.
Could you repeat your name, please? I didn't catch that.
I'm sorry?
Could you repeat your name? I didn't catch that.
Jenny John.
Jenny John.
I live at 95 East 25th. I own that property. I also own 2460 Oak. I also own 2470 Oak. My property lies directly behind Capella's Market. I can't begin to tell you, I have very mixed feelings in both directions with this situation, because we have a lovely community, but living in a dead-end street behind a market which has complete free reign to have a loading dock to the side of my house that all their employees park in my neighborhood, just to think about a 7-story building in a small little neighborhood really encroaches on us, and it is a mess for all of us in that neighborhood. I can't begin to tell you. I'm not opposed to growth. I'm not opposed to change. if it's done in a manner that affects everybody. I love the idea of more multi-dwellings on one property versus going up. But let's say that I die and someone else buys my property. I would like to know how all of the CCNRs for Oak Street from 25th, 26th, and 27th are going to be affected. Because Mr. Plummer, or the gentleman who put those CCNRs in place, made that for single home dwellings to stay in existence in that area to preserve it. And I want to know what cost that I'm going to have to generate if I'm in a position that my family or somebody else wants to buy my property is going to have to absorb in changing CCNRs. No, we do not have an active CCNR group, but those laws were put in place and that property was protected for the very purpose that it's being used for now. And no one has addressed the CCNRs. And I would just like to be informed. I don't feel that I should have to go pay an attorney to protect property that I love so much. And again, everything that everybody has said here, it all applies to my area as well. And it's a very, very intense area, just being behind Capella's Market as it is, without all of these other common denominators. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that takes care of the people who have wished to testify. And I think before we close the hearing, there was a request to keep the record open. And so, Gabe, give me some guidance on that.
I'd be happy to. So we have deliberations scheduled for June 15th. And since these are legislative proceedings, we have some flexibility in terms of an open record period. But what I would suggest, at least initially, is a 7-day open record period so that staff would have the ability to take in that additional testimony, organize it, and provide it back to planning commissioners, and perhaps even take the opportunity to summarize some of the key topic areas from tonight's hearing to try to facilitate the deliberations.
And what would be a good date to leave it open until?
Well, for 1 week, that would take us to June 9th at 5 p.m., close of business.
June 9, 5 p.m. Okay. Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, I believe you do.
Okay.
I move that we keep the record open till June 9th, 5 p.m.
I second it.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The record will be kept open until June 9th at close of business day, 5 p.m. And then with that, then I can close the hearing, leaving the record open. I'm looking at Ann to make sure I'm doing this right. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll close the public hearing, leaving the record open. Staff response?
I don't believe, unless Robin would like to jump in, that we have any specific responses. One of the things we'd like to do with the open record period is to digest some of the information we've got tonight, to consider that testimony and think about how we might organize or help facilitate your deliberations with some of the substance we've heard tonight. We would welcome questions, at least initially, to help get a sense of more information commissioners would like. We may not be able to respond immediately tonight, but we can take that tonight and follow up as part of a summary for the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. And I think I'm just going to maybe come down the line to start with questions. I know I have a couple to start at this end. I saw the hands down here. Okay, Commissioner Mills. Okay, for now, Commissioner Jaworski. It's not your last chance to.
Not my last chance?
As far as questions.
Okay. It might be in there somewhere, but I missed it. Under design review, is the building height adjustable under that?
It is not.
Well, that's a quick one.
They'd have the answer to that one.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions just as far as further information for when we get into the deliberations. Mr. Shaver mentioned the 25th and Portland and the step down in that one parcel there. I'd like maybe a little more information. Not sure exactly what I'm asking as far as what maybe precipitated that or how we got there.
Sure, and
possible?
just briefly, in my conversation before the hearing tonight with Will, it seemed to me that there may need to be some clarification on the height diagram in the code as far as the extent of that transition, where exactly it should exist, and then to follow up on the question about the mixed-use sub-district across the street, we'll be happy to do that.
Okay, and I think that's really my question as far as the step down and the transitions there, and then also a similar question that Mr. Alonso had with the 7-story. I noticed the 7-story at Portland Street steps down to the south to 3 stories. And as far as the transition there, maybe a little more information on.
In which direction?
South.
South.
So it's 7 stories, and then immediately south is 3 stories.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Baker.
Yeah, there was a lot of testimony about this area, 23rd Avenue, and the issue. Yeah, there was a lot of testimony about this East 23rd area, and it's a one-block street, and issues already there with access and so forth. So it would be good to have some, staff thoughts about that area, because when I'm looking at it, I see that it's almost like the new zones. It looks to me like 5 stories, all of that area. Okay, and that, I just wanted to be concerned about that. These are 1 block long side streets, and if it doesn't connect with Amazon, which I could see why you wouldn't want to do that 1 block from the major intersection, there really could be some serious access problems using that street to get to these higher density properties. Like continue previous concerns about losing lower cost housing to be displaced by more expensive housing. So that area in particular, given the 1 block nature of the street. I also am a bit concerned. There was a lot of testimony about parking, and I want to make sure that if you summarize the parking proposals in a way that the public can understand, I think that would be useful, to us as well, just so we know what the parking changes will essentially be from what's currently required now and what will be required with this new change, or what the reduction in requirements or whatever, so we can better view that. And again, you could compare it with the zones around the university that have parking problems now that might be similar to this with particularly several people mentioned employee parking in the area. The same thing we have around the university, and just want to make certain that we're getting the parking information right on.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yeah, I have similar questions as Commissioner Randall. I also wanted to find out, Gabe, when you plan to give us there's some testimony that was submitted prior to tonight, and then there was additional testimony that we received tonight, when we can anticipate getting those.
Yeah, well, I think that our preference would be to collect all of the testimony from tonight as well as what's been received to date, and to provide a kind of a holistic summary following the close of the record. So it would be in advance of your meeting on the 15th, but it would give us a chance to sort of deal with it all as a whole, and to make sure that you have that before you begin deliberations. So,
perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Borowski.
I have a couple of things. I will not be able to be at the deliberations on the 15th, so I'm going to bring up a couple of things that I heard at the open house that we had last week, and hopefully those can be discussed at that, and hopefully we will have more than one deliberation so that I can weigh in on it. One of the things that was brought up was the building heights at the end of the zone towards what one person mentioned as the Y at 32nd and Willamette. Right now it's scheduled for 5-story max. I think this is another area where the topography of that neighborhood and the way the hill works, kind of like we did on the other end, I don't know if that section there actually needs to be 5-story. I think 3-story might be more appropriate. So I'd like something like that to be looked at. Another thing that was brought up at the workshop was a parcel-specific property, and this is the fueling station at 29th and Willamette. The people who own that property and the people who manage it would like to keep it a fueling station, would like to make it a better-looking fuel station, and would like to make it work better with it being on an intersection as it is. And they felt that there may be some design constraints with having to build to the front of the thing and being able to drive through and have it be a workable situation. I know that Robin was privy to that conversation, and I would like to at least have that brought up and see if there is a way that can be addressed before it goes to implementation. One other thing that I noticed, parking was brought up a lot, and I think parking is going to be an issue anytime there's more development going on. One of the things that jumped out at me it's on page 85 of tonight's AIS, and it has to do with parking located in the footprint of a building, or if you're building a parking facility. There's a provision in that says 1% of the cost of the building has to fund public art. I'm all for public art, and I can buy into that when public money is being used to build a parking facility. However, if we're going to be in a parking constrained area, I think anything that constrains the economics of building a parking facility, 1% can mean a lot. I think that the design standards that we're putting into place will protect the neighborhood from it being an ugly parking facility. And so I have concerns about adding 1% to somebody's bottom line when they're building a facility that's not publicly funded. And so I would like us to talk about that and see if that is something that the community feels is necessary. If parking is such an issue, would public art maybe make it not feasible, 1%? And could that make it?
What page is that on again?
I've got it on page of tonight's one. It's on PC agenda page 85. It's under section E, the third bullet point. So I just would like to have that discussed at some point.
He's got a different one.
It's in both. This is, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Page 98 of tonight's.
Okay.
It was 85 of last week's. I'm sorry.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah, I apologize for that. So those are a couple of the things that I'd like to have addressed and talked about. I believe that these issues are tough for all of you people who are here and came out to testify. I appreciate you guys taking your time and giving us input as to what's going on in your neighborhoods. And we have difficult decisions to make as a planning commission in recommending this to the city council. How do we want the city to grow? And we take that very seriously. And we can't please everybody all of the time. I think that's evident by the myriad of people that you had talking here. And one person said they liked this but didn't like that. And the other person said they liked that but didn't like this. So we will look at all of these things. We'll do what we feel is our best job in interpreting what the overall city of Eugene wants and what your people in your neighborhoods can do, and the best we can do to protect those neighborhoods and move forward, into the years coming forward. So, thank you.
Mr. Mills?
Yeah, I had a couple of requests for information and I guess one comment. And it's the same song. It's parking, and I guess what I'm interested in is in some of our previous sessions, staff has mentioned that there's going to be some interim parking measures that are going to help alleviate parking concerns, but they're not part of the code. And I guess I'm going to ask for more information and specificity on those interim parking measures. In order to support this, we're going to have some specificity there so we know that we're not leaving these people hung out. We've heard a lot of talk tonight, a fair amount about congestion and traffic, but no talk about the multimodal designation for the area, which will increase traffic or increase the allowable traffic. So that's a concern that I have, that I think a little bit more outreach is required from the city so that the citizens understand this, that we're basically going to allow traffic to get worse.
I'd like to sort of follow up on Commissioner Baker and Commissioner Borowski in taking a look at the parking, and since that was expressed here, if I understood Commissioner Baker, he wanted to have an idea of, I guess, what the current parking situation for that area is. I guess that's a total number. During our deliberations, I'd like to walk through the design review affecting parking from 97 to page 99, because I'd like to know, I understand you can't exceed 50% of the minimums, but using, for lack of a better term, a worst-case scenario, and that a developer does go and utilizes all of the options for 50% of the minimum, what are we talking about for parking for that area versus what was there? So that's an issue. And I'd also like to just give a heads up that I want to go through the design review as it relates to partitions, PUD, and subdivisions, the reference to needed housing versus the general review. Just some more clarification on that, and I'll state more during the deliberations about what those concerns are.
Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on some other commissioners in the discussion of the service stations. We from the public open house had some long discussions with some people, but I wanted to frame it that it's not just that location, but we obviously want to allow a certain number of gas stations in this area to service the neighborhood because it's a long way away from other gas stations. So right now the provisions would make it very difficult to rebuild a gas station under the current requirements. So we need to look and see how we could modify those requirements so that for certain exceptional properties, maybe existing gas station locations, I don't know what, but the point is we need to have some mechanism so that if these places wanted to redevelop, build a nicer grocery food mart along with it or whatever the, service part, that they could do that. Because right now there seems to be a problem with the current setback requirements and so forth and access requirements. And again, I follow up on the parking. I think other commissioners have mentioned it. I would also like to know what the current parking requirements would be under our current code and what they will be under the new code. In other words, we have something that essentially is R3, and that requires so many parking spaces, and now we have we're changing that to this number of spaces. And also cases where we are allowing exceptions or reductions in open space or parking based upon other amenities. We'll have to look carefully at those to make sure that they're not open-ended. So I think I mentioned some of these in the past to Robin. So,
Commissioner Taylor.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Commissioner Mills brought up, and that is I would love to, the Planning Commission through our various past meetings has highlighted parking as a challenge and encouraged staff to look into some potential creative ideas, public infrastructure or public parking, public-private partnerships. And while it isn't part of the code, I would love to have an update as to what has been discovered, what the options are, and have a better understanding of what those action items would be to actually put them into effect. The other has to do with a larger infrastructure, not just parking, but a couple of the neighbors brought up phone, electrical lines, et cetera, some of the public infrastructure, and what is the public, City of Eugene's process to contribute to the evolution of this area. So it also has to do with another gentleman brought up what does happen if there's inconsistencies along the Willamette corridor, that there's only a few properties left. What does that look like? What is that end outcome? So it's really in the public realm. What is that's not included in this proposal that I'd love some additional follow-up so that we can both be informed as well as the public.
Any other questions, Commissioner Baker?
It's not related to that, but I was just going to suggest, this is that packet of stuff you've already received, and it's fairly thick. It might be valuable for us to get that in advance, this packet and then another set of packet later on, so because it's a lot of reading here, in other words.
So to be clear, we'll be providing, we've already given you the packet of at least a hard copy tonight of what we've received up to this point. We'll provide that electronically tomorrow.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be held until the record was closed, and then all of a sudden we get the even bigger packet.
Yeah. I think what we would like to do, though, is to sort of distill some of the key topic areas, including those raised by commissioners tonight, to try to facilitate deliberations, to sort of boil it down to some key discussion points for your next meeting. So that's what I would expect to provide sometime after the 9th, just to be clear.
Seeing no further questions, just want to remind everyone we've decided to keep the record open until close of business day, 5 p.m. on June 9th. So additional testimony will be accepted up until that point. And then we will begin our deliberations on Monday, June 15th at 11:30 in the Sloat Room. That's in the City Building at the corner of 10th and Olive, I believe is the cross street there. So with that, I think we're adjourned.